Joyce Lasovsky. I was born in Cape Town in 1925, the only child of my parents, Joseph and Sarah Sachs. My mother was born in America, something that I was always quite proud of, other than the shtetls of Lithuania. And my father studied in Switzerland, and they, being more enlightened, felt as an only child they didn't want me, perhaps the word subject is strong, but they didn't want to impose the narrow religious life that they experienced in my Jewish education. Consequently, it was always, would you like to learn Hebrew? And the answer was always not attractive to a child. So I never learned Hebrew, I never went to shul, and regrettably never joined a youth movement. So this was the new generation. Quite as a shock when I finished school and met Mervyn, who was at university, already a passionate Zionist, wearing a hideous green and white blazer, Zionist youth blazer, with a huge gold Magen David on the pocket. I absolutely cringed and came as a terrible shock to me. Anyway, we met where else than on Musenberg Beach in 1942, and I was at university for 2 years before starting my nursing training, and dated fairly regularly throughout that year, towards the end of which Mervyn was joined up and went to the war, and I started my nursing career. In today's instant communication with internet, Skype, Twitter and everything, who would remember how I stood at the gate waiting for the postman for those long-awaited letters that we wrote for years and years.
How long would the letter take to get to you?
The letter from Salisbury, but there wasn't. It was the letter from Europe, during the war.
Right.
Weeks it would take. So that was a very poignant recollection of the infrequent contact as opposed to today's world. After my university, where I did a nursing diploma, I did my nursing training at Rhodesia Hospital. Nursing was regarded as a terrible profession for a nice Jewish girl, and was always greeted with surprise, borne out by the fact that out of the staff, of nursing staff of over 500 at Rhodesia, we were never ever more than 6 Jewish probationer nurses. Anyway, that was the long nursing career and the long association, and with its ups and downs. But at the end of the war, much to my delight, after all these letters, 2 weeks after he got home, not to the delight of his mother, I'm sure, but he came to visit me in Cape Town. And the relationship was renewed, and of course it was becoming evident that he was going to be my bashert. After I finished my training, I went up to Rhodesia, and this was my first taste of Salisbury, the difference, the colonial type life. You called on people if they'd had a baby, or you didn't just visit informally. There was this whole atmosphere of Britain. They often said Rhodesia was more British than Britain ever was. And of course, surrounded by this mass of black help was a revelation to me. I returned to Cape Town after this our engagement, and we got married in Cape Town, after which we returned, had a honeymoon on the Dutch-Africa line, and landed in Salisbury in Edmunds Court, a flat owned by the Jolson brothers. Old Rhodesians might remember Edmunds Court, to find in tow Wilfred, the cook boy, the cook man. Today it's socially unacceptable to use that term, but Wilfred, trained by my mother-in-law, assisted by Casper, the piccanin, again an unacceptable word, to do his hard stuff like the wash-up and wiping the kitchen floor. And then soon after, when we had our first child, Agnes Mapunga, our nanny. So there we were, 2 people and a baby, and the 3 staff. Soon after we died, unfortunately, about 2 years after we were married, Barbara was just born, Mervyn's mother died, and we opted to move into Montague Avenue with his beloved father. We built on an extra wing for him, and it worked out extremely well. I then was swept into the world of Zionism, Judaism, committee work, set by the amazing example of the family, and soon found myself active on WITSO, on the Union of Jewish Women. Actually, we started a young Hannah-Senish WITSO group, of which I was the chair lady, in its instigation, and was very much part of the fold there. We then, also having lots of time, we were chosen and did a training course in marriage guidance, which I did for many years, in addition to the leisure activities like learning bridge and tea parties and the usual warm social life that Salisbury was available and found. Imagine how exciting it was to be growing up, to be living in this wonderful country, until things began to change. The political unease settled in. There was the feeling of huge change, unrest, war on the borders, which didn't immediately touch our lives, but which was around. And it soon became evident that this wonderful country was not going to be the one in which our children were going to find their future. Most young people went to university in other towns, and Kenneth went to Cape Town University. Barbara came to Israel on a garin with 11 other young Habonim people, and settled. Some of them didn't stay, but here she's been, and married Brian Reichman, who might be of interest, did a Birmingham medical degree at Salisbury University. They got married, came to Israel, followed a few years later by Beth, who met Michael Nachamovitz, had a very Israeli-type wedding in Salisbury, where it took great persuasion for Michael to wear a tie. And obviously they came on aliyah to do a residency at Tel HaShomer Hospital. That first year was wonderful, where we were a whole family, giving us a chance to settle in. When we came on aliyah, it became blatantly obvious that this was the only place we were coming to. But it was short-lived as a get-together family, because a year after, Beth and Michael went to America and did a residency there, and of course did well and never came back. And shortly after that, Barbara and Brian did a stage in Toronto at the Hospital for Sick Children. We settled in Rehovot because of Brian and Barbara, and it's been a wonderful place to have been in. Because it's an academic town, and although I didn't have any formal training, my English was good, and I found wonderful morning jobs at the Weizmann Institute and at the Jerusalem University's Faculty of Agriculture for many, many years, helping in the English department. All these scientists wanted to publish or perish, which became an absolute cliche. And of course they were publishing in English and American magazines, and the fact that I wouldn't interfere with the science, but I would be able to correct the English, was a big plus. This was in Rhodesia. I retired when I was 65, which is how many years ago?
We're not counting.
Anyway, also it was wonderful to have had with us in Rehovot landslide in the form of Nick and Nellie Aladev, who settled in Rehovot. I think we may have had a role in this. And even my doctor, Dr. Gisi Borak, who was my doctor in Salisbury, landed up in Rehovot and remained our doctor and good friend, he and Bill, for these many, many years past. It was a warm, friendly community. Obviously, the ex-South Africans adopted us, and it's been a great, warm family life, working life of interest and great rewards. We now have 4 granddaughters, 2 of whom live here, 3 great-granddaughters, the eldest of whom is 13. And as Mervyn said before, we have huge nostalgia for Rhodesia and have had no experience really personally of Zimbabwe, and have been happy to have been together these many years and have had a very interesting and happy life here. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I remember vividly, as we were leaving Salisbury, everyone was giving us farewell dinner parties. And at one, I remember it was at Bertha Mice, and there was a guest there, and I've forgotten his name, who, hearing of our imminent plans to come to Israel, said somewhat pensively, "Aren't you lucky to be leading 2 lives for the price of 1? I thought at the time, what a strange sort of thing to say. But bearing in mind the total separation of both types of lives, and how I had to adjust to learn how to cook, to learn Hebrew, to be without the help of yesteryear. It was, but I can honestly say that separate though they were, no one is making comparisons, but the Israeli life has been most interesting and worthwhile.